morning and welcome to another great episode of Money Truth Moments with Judy Copenbarger. Good morning, Judy. How you doing?
I am awesome. How are you doing, Carlos?
Hey, doing great. I always look forward to our Tuesday morning shows because there's a lot of great content we want to cover. So, folks, thank you for joining us this morning. If you are not following Judy, please make sure you do so at judycopenbarger.com. There's a wealth of information. There's key things that we're going to discuss today that you're going to learn. You're going to want to stay tuned for that as well, too. So I know we have a jam-packed show for today, so I want to jump right into it. One of the things that we wanted to discuss today was all about blended families. So do you want to start by giving us, there's obviously different definitions of a blended family, but what we really want to tie it into is in your world, the money, truth, and life.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a blended family is a family that has his, hers, theirs, others. There's so many kinds of families anymore. It used to be mom and dad and then their babies, right? But there's so many adoptions now. There's remarriages. There's serial marriers. There's all kinds of families. And you end up with a family that has people from, you might even have a family where there's several children and then a big gap in age, and then more children. And at our house, we kind of did litters. We had a couple, and then years later, we had some after law school, right? Then we had some more close together. So a blended family is just one that is not necessarily traditional. And when you have a blended family, there are special issues that might arise. And I think that's worth addressing today.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, now that you brought that up, let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
So one of those questions that's come up is, how do you sustain financial harmony in a blended family?
Wow. There's probably three C's that would really be able to answer that well. One is communication. You've got to have clear communication. And this is for every area of life, for a blended family particularly, or any family. But you've got to have clear communication. What are our goals? What are we trying to do? What's not working? Do we need to back up a little bit, recalculate, recalibrate, and do something different? But communication is key. Another thing is to have common goals. With the outcome in mind, what are we trying to do here with your kids, my kids, and our kids? What are we really trying to accomplish while we're raising them, whether it's financial or any other issue? And then third, I think creativity. If you keep it light, keep it fun, just kind of roll with it, laugh at the crazy stuff that happens. When there's a miscommunication, instead of just bringing anger to the situation or building up that kind of resentment that can really be there over time, just say,
Right.
What? I screwed up. I made a mistake. That's not what I want. That's not the path I want us to be on, and just back up. And so I think just being creative with the objectives that you have, with the ways that you do money at your house, I think will really go a long way. So that's it. Three things.
Awesome.
Yeah, communication, common goals, and creativity.
Folks, I hope you're writing this down because these are very great pointers that Judy's given us today. I want to also follow what we're talking about, the blended family. When I think of blended family, it always reminds me too of the Brady Bunch, right? Everybody knows the Brady Bunch, right? So
absolutely, his and hers, right?
His and hers, absolutely. So I wanted to talk to you also about, how do we create that fairness among the kids? Like, fairness with, obviously, if you have different family members, blended family, there's going to be, I don't want to use the word arguments, but there's going to be discussions on fairness with vacations, gifts, education, and all of that fun stuff that comes with family.
Yeah, it can be really tricky. So if you've got a couple of kids in the household and maybe they have parents that they don't share, the step parents out there, they're going to have different experiences. They might have totally different resources that are available to them. Maybe there's a wealthy or a not so wealthy parent out there. There's going to be different treatment. It's just going to be that way. And one of the things, we have 5 children. So as they were coming up, life is not always fair. That was one of the little mantras we had. It's like, well, life's not always fair. So, but I think in the spirit of that, sometimes we speed and we don't get pulled over. That's not fair. And then sometimes you get a ticket for hardly doing anything. That's not fair. So there's the ups and there's the downs. And if we just have a positive attitude and we raise our children with, life's not always fair, but look at all the blessings you have. Look at all the things you get to do, all the things you get to have. And we're together. We chose to be together. When you celebrate those kinds of things and just have a culture of celebration and looking at the positive side of things, I think that'll go a long way, even though the treatment will be different, because even with twins in the same house with the same parents 24/7, they're going to have different experiences that are not
Right.
shared. And it won't feel fair all the time. But if they understand sometimes it's not fair to my advantage and sometimes it's not fair to my disadvantage, it's always going to come back around. I used to be so mean to my kids. I would line them up in front of a vending machine all together and I'd say, look, I'm going to put 50 cents in. We're going to get one thing. If there's any squabbling, any arguing, they still remember this. If there's any disharmony that comes out of this, then I'm going to take that money, put it back in my purse, and we're not going to get a treat at all. But if you guys can agree, there's lots of ways you can agree to get a treat. Then we're going to go ahead and do it. So they might say, well, gee whiz, last time I got to pick, this time you get to pick. Or why don't we get something, maybe it's not my favorite and your favorite, but it's both of our second favorite. Let's get that. So they learn to negotiate. They learn to compromise. They learn to delay gratification, right?
Right.
Doing that. So that mean thing I did had a lasting impact, and it taught them those things. Like, I might not get my way now, but I'm getting something. And next time it'll be my turn and then I can have my way. So things like that you can do to just kind of bring in that spirit of we're in it together, I think goes a long ways in any family, but particularly in a blended family.
That's a great example, and folks, thank you for joining us this morning. We're here speaking with Judy Copenbarger. Not only is she she just possesses wisdom and finances, but hey, you're also getting a bonus as Parenting 101. So great things to keep in mind too, for sure.
No extra charge.
That's right. So folks, make sure that you follow Judy on judycopenbarger.com. She's got all of her social media pieces on there as well too, all the platforms. We are talking today about blended families. There's some key areas that we've talked about so far. How do they sustain financial harmony? How do we create fairness? But I think that the next piece has also been on people's mind, and I've heard this several times over, is it's the $1 million question about life insurance, because that's important to a family, right? It's important for parents, it's important for kids. And maybe let's start a discussion on how do we even get started, or how do we even start thinking about life insurance?
Yeah, and it's not just for blended families, it's for any family. And life insurance is interesting because it's a tool that we use to manage a risk that we can't afford to take on ourselves. So if we can't afford to buy a brand new car, we have car insurance. If we can't afford to build a brand new house, if there's a fire, we have fire insurance, right? Homeowners insurance. So for life insurance, it's if that inevitable what if happens sooner than we expect it to, what are we going to have to replace? And so life insurance needs are different at every stage of life. In a young family, it is so important to imagine I'm not here to earn money. Dad's not here to earn money. What are we going to have to replace? Not one time, but all those years of future income that would have been there. Do we want them to be able to stay in soccer or stay in music lessons? Do we want them to be able to go to summer camp or private schools? Are we planning on paying for college? So the first thing in an analysis for life insurance for any family is, what do I need it for? What are we replacing? So it could be income replacement. It could be business replacement. What if I am a sole proprietor in my business, or I'm a key man, right? They call it key man, like a very important person in my business. And without me, the business would really have a hard time moving on. How do they replace me there? Are they going to have to hire someone? Are they going to have to train someone? Well, of course, they would need to hire several people to replace me, right? But what about a partnership, a business where you have, let's say there's two men that came together as partners. They both have wives and families, and one of the men passes away. Not only does the business need to replace that key person, that key employee, but what about the interest in the business now? The wife knew nothing about, manufacturing pipes, whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we want her to have the benefit of the business value that would have grown if her husband had been there for the next 5, 10, 20 years. So insurance around business interests, not only for the family, but for the partners, is very important. It could be that the goal for your insurance is to make sure that if you're not around, the kids get to go to college, or they get to have the wedding of their dreams, or they get that launch money to start a business or to buy their first condo or their first home. So there's different reasons in different seasons of life for insurance. And you always start with why. Why do I need it? What's it for? Once you know what it's for, you can calculate. That's where we come in to help people figure out the math. Well, how much do you need now? And what kind is right for you? Do we need life insurance that's permanent, that's going to be there when I'm 80, 90, and 100? Or do we just need it for a temporary reason? So once my kids are 22, 25, 30, I probably won't have that need for educating them, because by then they probably would have done what they're going to do. So then the need goes away. So I might not need permanent insurance. I could use the insurance fix in that instance. So you got to start with why, then you figure out how much, then you figure out what kind, and then you have a perfect analysis. A lot of times people will ask, well, should I insure my children? Should I have life insurance on my children, right? I'm not a big believer personally. I think it's a personal decision. But for me, we did not insure our children for life insurance while they were little. As soon as they became young adults, they all got their own, and they got it for several different reasons. Long-term investments to cover all those needs in their early lives. And then as they marry, to make sure that they already have it and their insurability is set. If they get a funny mole or they get some kind of a diagnosis where they're not insurable, they're already set. So they've all done that. But personally, I don't believe in insurance for minor children. It's usually way overpriced. And the idea is they've had it forever. Mom got it for me. Grandpa got it for me. Why would I get rid of it? So when you're 18, they make a deal where you can just keep paying these premiums. Well, if you put those premiums next to a premium of just a regular term insurance that you find out there, they're usually 3, 4, or 5 times more money per premium. But now they've got you, right? It's like, I've always had it. So it's worth looking at if you have one of those. The other side of that is a lot of times there will be an employer that offers life insurance as a benefit.
Right.
And they'll allow you to insure your spouse. They'll allow you to insure your children for a small, burial. It's not going to be hundreds of thousands, but enough, to help any final expenses if something did happen to them. And sometimes those are just pennies on the dollar. It might be a couple dollars a month for that, or $5 a month. Well, then just go ahead. I wouldn't avoid it just because, it's a philosophical thing. If it's practically free, take it. Right. But personally, I don't think there's a need to insure children. That's just my personal belief. So I think that's a helpful explanation there for you.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, as far as like insuring kids and all that, I know that there is a lot of insurance agents out there who really push that.
Yeah. I
got that pushed on me when we were looking at our life insurance, and Mason was probably about maybe 1 or 2 years old. And I'm thinking, that's almost like I don't want to curse my kid putting insurance on. I'm like, who's, I've never heard of that. Right. It's almost like, it's just nuts. But obviously there's a logic explanation to it. You've gone through it as well too. And it is exactly what you said. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Mm-hmm. But I think also what I've seen, at least in my experience, is they always use the fear factor. Well, what if, what if I just walk outside and get hit by lightning, right? What if? It's always that fear factor. But I'm glad that you're sharing this with folks, because that's come up a lot of times. Not only I know for me, but for a lot of my friends, a lot of families and stuff, new families also as well too, where, well, should we do this? We have life insurance. Why shouldn't we put it on our kid or whatever too? So thank you for explaining that. I mean, that's major.
My pleasure.
So can you also tell us when is enough for an insurance, right? So like, I know that there's policies, 50,000, 100,000, and some jobs offer, 75,000 of life insurance. Others you can buy $500,000, million, and then you get into the millions of dollars on that too, right? So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to when is enough, or maybe you can talk a little bit about that, or what should we look for?
Absolutely. Well, the analysis we went through before will get you pretty close to the mark, because it's different for everyone. So the first thing is, what's it for? So if you say, wow, my company's giving me $200,000 if I die while I'm working there, that's a lot of money. And if it was in the bank, that is a lot of money. That's fantastic. But imagine you have income that was there that's not there before. So if you have a $50,000 salary and $200,000 in 4 years, that's gone. Now what are we going to do? Right? How are we going to keep the expenses going? So it could be that $200,000 needs to turn into maybe $1 million, maybe $2 million. Let's see. Oh my goodness, what would I do with $2 million? Well, let's say it's just 1 million. If you took 1 million and you took maybe 5% out a year from the earnings, there's your $50,000 a year that now is replacing the income that is not being earned by the person who passed away. That's how you want to calculate it, because it's not a one-time thing. In that instance, what the need that you have is ongoing every year for a long time. And that might also need to plan for future launch money for if you still have minor kids. You know, if somebody passed away in their 40s or 50s, it's likely you would. And what about the future? You know, maybe there was a pension that now won't be there. How are we? Maybe the Social Security that now won't be there, you know, if you're a couple. So making sure that the money is tucked away, even though it seems like a lot of dollars all at one place, because usually we have dollars tucked away, but while we're living, they're not accessible for us.
Right, right.
But to have it where you can put it away and then have that ongoing income and all those needs met with that bucket of money that you would have been earning power is huge. So the answer is one of those law school answers. It depends.
Right.
What's it for? How long will you need it? What kind do you need? And if you go through those questions and really think about, you know, if my husband wasn't here, how would that impact us? What would we need to replace? What about the wife? If you have a wife that's home with the kids or a husband that's home with the kids, they're not really earning money, but their contribution to the household is huge. So mom's at home cooking, cleaning, making sure the kids get their homework, you know, making sure they're in front of the computer doing their virtual school this year. And they're doing what they're supposed to do. And she takes them to the doctor and she goes and gets the groceries and all those things. If dad had to keep working and somebody else needed to do all the things that stay-at-home mom is doing, that would take some money. So if you have little kids that are not in school yet, that's about $80,000 a year value you would have to replace, unless you have family that could step in and do it for free. If they're in school, it's about $50,000 a year that it would take for someone to cook and clean and nanny and do all the things for you to continue to work at your profession. So here we are again. If it's $50,000 a year, we're going to need $500,000 at least to get 10% a year out. You probably need double that, $1 million on a stay-at-home wife, right? Stay-at-home mom. You probably need $1 million to make sure that you have that $50,000 or so a year if you need it to replace all that work that she was doing. It wasn't earning money, but it was a contribution to the household that you really don't want to overlook.
Right. So I've heard also through life insurance, there's creative ways I think that a lot of companies are also utilizing that. And one of the terms that I've heard come up, and I don't know if this is something we could talk about really briefly, but is there something called living benefits attached to life insurance? I've heard that term before, or something similar.
Yes, there are living needs benefits. There's all kinds of words for benefits from a life insurance policy that you can use before you pass away.
Right.
So it's great for everybody else when I die, not great for me to get the death benefit, right? But living benefits are fantastic. This is where you can get your long-term care managed. This is where you can get your critical care managed. This is where you can get money out of your policy. And if we had time, I could tell you stories of my clients that benefited so much from these valuable benefits because they get a long-term cancer diagnosis. They lose a limb or a couple of limbs. And now you can get the van with the raised up elevator and the wheelchair and the ramps and retrofit your house for it using the benefits from the death benefits, but you're not dead yet, right? I'm not dead yet. So you can use those. It's huge. If you have a stroke, if you have blindness coming onset of blindness, if you have early dementia, or if you need someone to come into your home to help you with some care, with some activities of daily living, ADLs. If you need someone to help you do those things while you're still living, whether or not you're in at the end of your time, it might be a temporary thing and then you bounce back. You know, the cancer is cured, whatever it is. You recover, you know, through rehab with your stroke or whatever. It's huge. And most good companies, A-rated good companies, are not going to charge you for that benefit.
Mm.
Now you can't get it twice. So if you have $1 million benefit, you use 200,000 during your lifetime. Now you have $800,000 left, right? You don't have another million, but it's huge if you need it while you're living. Some people take the money out when they know their time is coming, and they'll go do that bucket list. I had a young gentleman that was, they were probably in their mid 40s, 45 or so. She passed away, but she had about 9 months that she knew it was coming. And for 6 months, she felt pretty good. In the early treatment at the end, she didn't. But so they did the bucket list thing, and they went all over Europe, and they went to the bridge and put the key on the bridge.
Yeah. The
And
locks, right? Yeah.
and he went back a couple of years ago with his son, who's old enough now to get it. And they went back and they found the thing and went through
Wow.
about the mama and that amazing trip they had while she was living. So things like that you can do with living benefits. I think if you can find a policy that does that, get a good agent that will help you with that, it's huge.
Wow, that's awesome. And I appreciate you sharing that. I know that we can dedicate an entire show to that specifically also, but it's something that came up. I want to make sure that folks are also aware that there's all of these little steps or options, not just, the general life insurance piece of it too. So thanks for explaining that. Folks, we are almost halfway through our show, past halfway. We want to thank you for joining us today too. If you're not following Judy, please do so at judycopenbarger.com. All of our social media links are there. There's a lot of great information in addition to what we're discussing today on blended families. Please follow her, share this feed out as well with folks. So I have one last question on this topic before we get to one of our favorite parts of the show. So since we're talking about blended families, we've talked about how do we create fairness? How do we sustain financial pieces? The $1 million question we just talked about, which was life insurance too. It also creates or brings up the question is, how do we avoid entitlement or guilt giving, right? When it comes to this, because that's a big one.
It absolutely is. And it doesn't take a blended family for this issue to come up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the parents that are working and they feel like they should be home when they're working and they should be working when they're home. And especially this year when everybody's trying to do that big balance, kids at home and working at home and social distancing and all that crazy extra stuff on top. But to get rid of the path or the notion of entitleitis, I think you need to start as early as possible with that. And one of the things we've already talked about is just like, hey, life isn't fair. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But if you're not feeling like you're winning, you're always going to win again. So it's kind of an attitude or a culture. I think if you always have the outcome in mind when you're dealing with children, you're going to really do better. And what I mean by that is you're at the grocery store. Little Johnny and Susie want, some special candy or special cereal, whatever it is. They want something at the store. And we didn't plan on that happening. So then you kind of get the fit. How do you get around, have a fit and then make a scene? It's like, oh, just put it in the cart, right? Well, I didn't do that. We left the store. That was not going to be reinforced. So I think if you have the outcome in mind, if I give in and I buy this treat right now, is that good for me or is it good for the child? And if you're always thinking, what's the outcome? What's their experience? What's the lesson in it for them? If you're always thinking about them and what their life looks like, not, we do it all day and it's just kind of easy to pass it off and not think about it. But this is an impression on them. And what are they learning from the experience they're having right now? What's the outcome? And so I can kind of rewind now and go back to that moment, when we're at the store and do we put it in the cart? Do we give in or not? The best thing for the child might be to say no, or to say maybe next time, or to say let's wait, or let's save up money, save up your own money for that. There's all kinds of options for things that we can do, behaviors that we can reinforce. And if you're always thinking, what's the outcome I want? What's the lesson I want them to have long term? I think you'll make better decisions instead of just trying to stop a behavior or just trying to get peace or get quiet at the moment. For you, what can I do that will help them learn discipline, delayed gratification, sharing, giving? What can I do to help their heart really be prepared for a successful future of generosity?
Awesome. And I know we're getting towards the end of the show, but I want to make sure that we get our favorite part of this.
Woohoo!
Let's talk challenge. What have you got for us this week?
Challenge time. Okay. Money, Truth, and Life is a program and a book that allows you to learn the basics of all 5 financial pillars, master them, and then navigate them well. So your challenge this week is to go through the 5 pillars, pick 3 issues that will really help propel you and your family towards success. So let's go through the 5 pillars quickly, and then you can pick some issues out of them. So first, we'll start with the protection pillars. The protection pillars are legal, insurance, and taxation. So legal, do you have a trust? Do you need one? Do you have a will? Do you need one? Do you have powers of attorney? Do you have the entities that you need to save taxes on your business? Those are the legal things. So there might be 1 or 2 issues in the legal area that you want to really make a note of. The second thing is insurances. We talked a little bit about life insurance today, but what about health insurance? What about the HSA, the health savings account you may or may not have available at your work? What about auto insurance, car insurance, business liability insurance, tort insurance, umbrella policies? Is there anything that you have avoided, because maybe it's not fun for you? Is there anything you've avoided that really you should pay some attention to, or at least shop the premiums down or get a good agent in the insurance area? Third is taxation. Are there taxes that you're overpaying or you're paying that you shouldn't pay at all? Should you make an appointment with your CPA or your enrolled agent? Hopefully you have a CPA and you're not trying to do all this on your own, but just get some wise counsel around taxes. And if you can mitigate or eliminate some of those taxes, that's money that can go towards your goals and towards your family, blended or not. And then there are 2 areas of finance, 2 pillars of finance that are growth oriented. The first one is cash reserves and cash flows. Is there something that you could do better in terms of a spending plan, budget? I don't really like the B word, but spending plan. Is there something you can do better in your savings to make sure that if the rainy day happened, you're prepared? A lot of us had that lesson this year when we weren't really prepared for what happened with our economy through the COVID experience. And finally, we have the investments. So investments include your real estate, not only your portfolio of real estate, but the home that you're living in if you own it. It involves all your banking, your mortgages, the borrowing issues, and then your traditional investments, your 401k at work, your 457, your IRAs, your stock accounts, your Ameritrade accounts, your bond portfolios, all of those investments that you have. So are there any areas of investments that you need to revisit? Something that you haven't done that you want to get started, something that you've been doing that maybe you need to just kind of put another pair of eyes on? So those are your 5 pillars. You have legal, you have insurance, you have taxation, you have cash flows and cash reserves and investments. So out of all of those, you should have a list of at least 3 things that you want to revisit or pay some attention to as an issue for this week. That's your challenge.
Awesome. And I know we have a couple of minutes, folks, but I want to ask you also, what do you have coming up as far as events? What are you going to be doing?
Oh, well, this next week, I'm really excited. There's a faith-based business summit with amazing speakers from all over the planet. Most of them are US, but there's some global. And I'll be sharing about Money, Truth, and Life, about the online mastery program, and about the perspective of finances in context of our whole lives, which is my bailiwick. So really excited to be part of that amazing panel, part of that amazing event. And that's coming up. It's actually over 2 weeks coming up. So that's what I'm up to this week.
So folks, we're going to let you know when that comes up also, so you can make sure that if you want to enroll, you can register on there as well too. You mentioned faith-based too. I don't know if you saw it, and this just, popped into my head too. Did you see just I don't know if it was a few days ago or a week ago too, you're talking about faith-based. There was this huge, massive prayer group in front of the Capitol. And I saw this. It's almost like I want to create a poster out of this because it was so awesome. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did. There were a lot of people there, 55,000. And my husband was there.
What?
And actually invited one of our son-in-laws and his father, and the three guys went out there, and they were there several days at the Capitol, just praying over it and just
Wow.
really being Americans, just celebrating freedom. And the coolest thing about that whole weekend, Saturday was a big event. That's probably the one you saw the photos from.
Hmm.
And it was an awesome gathering of people that were just peacefully supporting the country and supporting the future that we want to have, what the founders intended, kind of getting back to that. So it was an amazing weekend. They were very impacted by just being in the place where so many of those historical events happened, and just reading the writing on all those monuments, and just being in the middle of, where the laws are made and where everybody's
Right.
carrying it out. They had a great time, and there was nothing political about it. They made sure it didn't matter if you were a Democrat, if you were a Republican, if you were a libertarian. They didn't care. It was all about freedom and our country, and just celebrating that we get to live here. So yeah, I'm glad you got to
Awesome.
see the outcome of that and the pictures from that. Very impactful.
Oh, I can imagine. I get that probably would have been a tearjerker for me, big time, because that much power in prayer. I mean, we always talk about that too. So I want to thank you for sharing that too. And I'm glad I actually know somebody who knows somebody that actually was there too. So that makes it even more meaningful as well. Yeah. So folks, thank you for watching our Judy Copenbarger today, Money Truth Moments. Judy, thank you for your time as always.
My
Please
pleasure.
make sure you guys tune in next week, every Tuesday, 8 o'clock in the morning. We have some great topics coming up, and have a fantastic week. Judy, again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to next week.
All right. Have a great week.
You too.